Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Bailey. Bailey, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you on the show. Bailey, this is going to be a fun conversation, something I absolutely love. But before we dive in, we always ask our guests a couple of things. What do you love from content and marketing? And let us get to know your background and a little bit about your work experience.
Yeah, so I'll start with the latter there. So I'm Bailey. I'm based out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Midwestern nerd through and through. I basically started my career in marketing a little different than most. Started down a path of pre-pharmacy in college and did a huge career change for the better. Got an amazing education at UW-Whitewater here in Whitewater, Wisconsin, where I earned my BBA in marketing. And from there, I really went down the path of content marketing. Before my current role as a content marketing manager at MPE Inc., where I'm currently at, I was at a marketing agency called Trefoil Group in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a boutique B2B communications agency where I learned pretty much everything that I know now about positioning yourselves for better outcomes in the B2B space. So outside of work, though, I'm a huge outdoors person. My husband and I love to hike, rock climb, kayak, fish, you name it. If I can get outside, I'm going to be doing it. And what I really enjoy most about content marketing is just the way that you're able to connect more with your audience. I'm a huge advocate for making things personable and using we, you, and I in your language. And I feel like content marketing is getting back to a space where people are kind of dimming the noise a little bit and bringing it back to that more one-on-one conversation. And when done correctly, it is an amazing tool for any business.
I love that. And I am looking forward to the same shift in marketing and content. I love the idea of having people really focus on their content, tell really good stories and have really good narratives and really just connect with people. And that's what we're going to talk about today is storytelling and the role that storytelling has in content and marketing. You know, I think sometimes we kind of get stuck in a rut. So this will be a cool opportunity to kind of refresh some elements here. So Bailey, to kick it off, why is storytelling important? I know it may sound a little self-explanatory, but in your own opinion, why is it important that we tell stories when it comes to our content marketing?
That is something that I think a lot of people don't actually ask themselves, you know, the importance that storytelling has in your content that you're creating. Kind of back to the point that I brought up, what I have really noticed in, you know, especially the B2B space, in any space really, is that idea that we just want to feel connected. The last couple of years with, you know, TikTok being now considered a search engine, other social media platforms trying to reach that, and especially the COVID-19 pandemic where we were isolated for so long, people are looking for that more personalized approach to things. So storytelling, I feel, is a way that you're able to bring that back into the equation. Storytelling is kind of a term that I think people skim over because it's seen as too idealistic or too childish. But in all reality, everyone just wants to feel like they can relate to something. And storytelling is a way to make that happen. You know, for example, you know, we're telling stories here about like our past experiences, how we got where we are. And by doing that, we're creating a relationship. And if you're able to use that same approach when you're creating your content and go back to your overarching strategy, people are a lot more likely to engage with it. And the right people are a lot more likely to convert in the long run.
So it's interesting there. And I love these points. You talked about the business is starting to talk about kind of where you came from, your experience, how long you've been in the industry. But how does a business tell really good stories? You mentioned also kind of in the introduction, the use of we, you, and I inside of content. Are we talking customer stories, stories about the business, stories about employees, all of the above? As a business, how do I tell these stories really effectively?
I would say it is all the above. One thing that I think has really reigned true for my experiences specifically is that idea of like personalizing things. So back to your point of like using the language of like we, you, and I. When you're going through schooling, and at least the schooling that I went through originally, it was always remove it. I don't want to see I don't want to see we, I don't want to see you. Mainly because people thought that you were calling out the customers too much in that messaging, I should say. And in English courses, it's like, no, this is professional talk. You don't want to do that. But it's actually turning more into the opposite because of the way that content is being driven. With search engines kind of updating themselves, privacy policies, causing, things all around, advertising really picking up on certain areas. There's a lot of noise going on right now. So if you think about it more in the sense of like through the customer's point of view, if you're scrolling through LinkedIn, for example, and you're seeing all of these posts from all these different companies that do the exact same thing as you, they have the same messaging, we're vertically integrated, we can do this and this. But you come across that one post where it's like, hey, I'm talking to you. This is what you're probably experiencing right now. This is how you can solve it. More so using that language to get right to the point instead of trying to nurture them. Because in all honesty, if you think about your marketing strategy, bigger picture, by them even following you on social media, they're at that point already where they want to learn more and they're seeing you as a thought leader in this space. So the best thing you can do is just deliver the things that they want. And in doing so, they'll trust you more, feel more connected, and next thing you know, you're closing a deal. So when it comes to the idea of like telling that story more, you have to think about all of your channels, honestly. That's one thing that I've really learned a lot is not necessarily taking like the point or taking the time to hone in on one point for each social channel, but taking a larger content piece and breaking it down into micro content pieces and giving them exactly what they want in that moment. I know old school practices were really focused on here's one social media post that talks about every single point that our blog talks about, and here's a link. But nowadays, people only have, the time of day to look at it for 5 seconds. So get right to the point, call them out because that's what they're looking for.
I love that. And when it comes to the tactical advice, plenty of listeners are probably saying, okay, cool. Yeah, I need to do a better job at telling stories. And yeah, maybe we can talk about the history of the business and our founders, or how we came up with this product idea, or how a customer saw this advantage or talked to this customer about these things. But when it really comes down to telling the story, how can we get better at actually telling the story? Do you have any advice to make us better storytellers as marketers?
Yeah, I would say my biggest piece of advice is going to be actually write the way that you do when you have conversations. That is another thing that I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm trying. I am too. Totally understand it. When you're a content marketer that spends so much time writing, you lose sight of that. I would say don't be afraid to start sentences with and or but. Add in an extra comma, break the sentence up with, italicized text, make it look like you are emphasizing the points that you really want people to understand, and throw in some more casual language. I honestly believe that professional language is kind of dead in the world of content marketing because everyone has been doing it for so long. It needs to be more casual, but professional casual. There's certain ways that you can go about it. And I would say that the best thing to do is to just take a step back and actually analyze the words that you're using and understand how you can make it a little bit more you and I conversation based.
I like that. I like the concept of feeling like you're trying to have a conversation with the person reading the content. I think that's really powerful. So when we were talking before we clicked record, you really talked about this concept that narrative and storytelling is just kind of like a book, and you should write almost like you're writing a book. How does that work, and how do we keep that in the back of our minds?
Yeah, so this is a concept that if you haven't already, I highly recommend reading the book, Building a Story Brand. I think it's by Donald Miller, I believe. Might have to fact check myself there. But
Yeah.
Yeah, it is an amazing book. And it kind of sparked that idea for me. And if you've read it before, you know how he creates a story brand. It's more so applicable in the world of content marketing, in my opinion, when you're trying to reposition yourselves or revamp your entire plan altogether. So for me, when I worked through it, I saw what he was saying, and instead of applying it to our brand per se in that moment, I applied it to all of the content that I will ever produce moving forward. You have to write like an author. You have to write like a writer. You have to write like you are telling a story, because at the end of the day, your company is a story. It's just continuously being written as you're evolving. So think about any story that you've ever read. You meet your main characters, and in a company, it's your founders. Especially in the world of B2B, I truly believe that you need to lean into your founder-led story in order to make it just feel a lot more down to earth. We are manufacturers per se. You have your main characters, your founders. You have the initial lead up to the event, your initial growth as a company. How did you get there? What were the ideas that laid that foundation for you? You have your major climax, which is going to be your big growth spurt, that product that really broke the world, that got you out on the map. From there, you kind of plateau a little bit and you explain, how you've gone about doing business, if you've added people, if you've added locations, all of that. However, because your story is continuously being written as an organization, you don't really see that drop off. You don't really see that end. But the way that you can continue people to feel like you're telling a story is going back to those main points that spike that initial, that's right, they're around. That's right, they do this. So every once in a while, you want to go back to the beginning and be like, hey, these are our founders. This is how we got here. This is our major growth, so on and so forth. As you're telling those stories, you want to think about it through the point of view as like the chapters that you have. So for my content strategy that I have at MPE, I view every quarter as a chapter in our book. This chapter, we are discussing this, this, and this. These are the main struggles that the characters are going to see. These are the main solutions that they're going to find. And this is how I'm going to nurture the leader through it. However, the characters in each chapter, through my point of view, is going to be the customer. This quarter in the world of medtech, they're really focused on sustainability and substance compliance. So how can I tell best chapter of this story that is going to meet their needs through the viewpoint of MPE as your solution?
I love that. So Donald Miller has an interesting book called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years as well. And it's interesting because he's trying to discover basically the story of his life. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was a precursor to building a story brand. And he's trying to tell his story. And he's going on these crazy adventures and doing these really fascinating things because he wants to write a better story. But in the very beginning, he goes to this conference and he talks about how he sat through 3 full days of this seminar. And after he walked out and talked to his friend and said, I don't actually know what a story is still. And his friend's like, it's a main character that overcomes a conflict to accomplish an objective. And it was that simple. And I think that that's really true for storytelling. And like you said, your customer is the main character. They're trying to overcome some kind of an obstacle. And you can be the guide and help them through that obstacle to accomplish some end goal. And if you can paint those 3 parts of the story, then that's something that they will resonate with. I think that's super powerful. I think it's super cool. So one final question, because these episodes go by so quick. Mm-hmm. How do you discover more story opportunities? Like you said, every single quarter is a new chapter in the book. And I love that analogy. I think that is amazing. You're writing the book in real time. This is the story of your company. I love just that analogy. I think it's super helpful. How do you find the inspiration and the ideation for telling new stories and knowing what stories you should tell and what ones will resonate with your audience?
Yeah, that's one that I think we'll never have a solid answer to because things change so much in the world of marketing, but I can share how I personally do it. For me, I look at my own life. I look at the season. I'm like, what am I doing right now? Because at the end of the day, I am just as much as a consumer of the MPE brand as our customers. And in order for me to be able to write an effective story, I have to be able to place myself in those shoes. So I look at my own life and, for example, if I'm going over to our headquarters, I walk through the shop floor. I'm like, what are these people experiencing right now? What are they working on? What are some of the devices that are being put out to the market? Flu season's right around the corner. What does that mean for our clientele? All that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, too, you just got to think about it from that human perspective, in my opinion. We're all human. We all have emotions. We all have things that are going to really get us going sometimes. And I just reflect on that as much as I can, while also doing the typical things of like keeping up with trends, reading the publications, doing a couple Google searches here and there. But I also make sure to always turn to our leadership team. They're the ones that are in these like really big conversations with our clients. And the best thing that I can do is just ask. One thing that I really learned throughout my career so far is just never be afraid to ask why. Anyone that you talk to will always say that I am a why person. And I will keep asking why until I feel like I have enough information to move forward with it. And I used to think it was pretty annoying where I'd be like, well, why do you say that? Why do you think this? But I found that it's super helpful in getting down to that true vital piece of information that is going to either make or break the content that you're creating.
And I love that framework of asking why. I think there's something officially called like the 5 whys that you should always ask. Okay, why are you doing that? Why? Keep going deep enough, like you said, until you get to the real insight. And I love that you focus on that. And I think that's cool that you're using that model to figure out your stories and the chapters and everything. So I love this. This has actually already got me thinking about new ways that I need to do my content marketing. So I think this is super powerful. Bailey, unfortunately, we're out of time today, but if anyone wants to further the conversation and reach out and connect with you online, how and where can they find you?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. That's going to be the easiest way to get hold of me. I'm really active. Feel free to also just reach out, ask questions. I think I have my email there too, but that'll be the easiest way.
And ask her why. You just
why.
heard she loves asking that. So I think that's perfect. Bailey, thanks again for the time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.